Part 3 years after the collective tried to end humanity, Taewon Park sat in a dark room surrounded by screens showing alien news broadcasts. He had become a master at reading between the lines, at understanding what wasn't being said. And what he saw now made him smile. The Galactic Collective was falling apart. 2 more species had withdrawn from the Council in the past month, citing concerns about security and political manipulation. 5 species were in open trade disputes. 3 had closed their borders to all other collective members. The unity that had lasted 3,000 years was crumbling, and most of them still didn't know why. Taewon's team had grown from just himself to over 200 specialists. They were linguists, psychologists, computer experts, and cultural analysts. Together, they had crafted the most sophisticated disinformation campaign in galactic history. They planted evidence of conspiracies that didn't exist. They forged communications between council members suggesting betrayals. They created entire fictional histories of secret alliances and hidden agendas. The beautiful part was that they didn't need to make everything up. The collective had plenty of real tensions buried beneath their facade of unity. Taewon just had to dig them up and put them on display. His latest project was particularly clever. He had discovered that the Velkari, the golden-scaled species that led the council, had been declining in population for centuries. They were dying out slowly, losing their influence, but they had hidden this fact from the other species to maintain their position of power. Taewon leaked that information through carefully orchestrated channels. Now the collective was demanding answers from the Velkari leadership. Trust was evaporating. The species that had welcomed humanity with false smiles before ordering their execution was now being questioned by their own allies. Taewon recorded a message for his brother Hyunwoo. The collective is starting to understand they've been manipulated, but they're looking in the wrong direction. They're investigating each other instead of looking for us. Their intelligence agencies are overwhelmed trying to track down internal threats that don't exist. We've turned their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. Commander Jisoo Nam was taking advantage of the chaos. Her strike teams had evolved from simple hit-and-run operations to something far more sophisticated. They were conducting psychological warfare that made the enemy question everything. She stood on the bridge of her ship, preparing for what she called Operation Mirror. Her target was a collective military base in the Tarsus sector. The base housed 3,000 soldiers and served as a regional command center. Traditional military doctrine would say attacking it was suicide. Jisoo had never been traditional. Her team had spent 6 weeks studying the base. They knew the guard rotations, the communication protocols, the command structure. More importantly, they knew that the base commander, a being from the Crick species, was deeply suspicious of the Velkari leadership. Taewon's disinformation campaign had done its work. Jisoo didn't attack the base with weapons. Instead, she attacked it with confusion. Her ships approached under stealth using technology adapted from captured collective vessels and improved with human ingenuity. They got close enough to tap into the base's communication network. Then they started playing recordings. The recordings were conversations between high-ranking Velkari officials, discussing plans to eliminate the Crick species. The conversations were fake, constructed from thousands of hours of real Velkari speech patterns and put together by advanced AI. They sounded completely authentic. Within an hour, the base was in chaos. The Crick's commander contacted his home government. Accusations flew. The base went on high alert, but not because they had detected human ships. They were preparing for a Velkari attack. Jisoo watched from a safe distance as collective reinforcements arrived. Velkari ships trying to calm the situation. Crick ships refusing to stand down. Weapons were powered up. Shields activated. For a moment, Jisoo thought they might actually start shooting each other. They didn't. Not this time. But the damage was done. The Crick species formally accused the Velkari of planning genocide. The accusation made its way to the council. More investigations were launched. More resources were diverted from hunting humans. Jisoo left the sector without firing a single shot. She had accomplished more with fake recordings than she could have with a fleet of warships. While Jisoo was conducting psychological operations, scientist Bora Shin was working on something that would change everything. She had been developing advanced artificial intelligence systems, something humanity had experimented with before the war but never fully deployed. The collective used AI too, but their systems were limited. They were programmed to follow strict rules, to make logical decisions based on predetermined parameters. They were tools, nothing more. Bora's AI was different. She called them the Watchers, and they were designed to think like humans. Chaotic, creative, unpredictable. She stood in her laboratory, deep inside Crucible 4, watching as her latest Watcher completed its first full test. The AI had been given access to collective communication networks and tasked with predicting their military movements. The results were remarkable. The Watcher had analyzed millions of data points, studying patrol patterns, fleet movements, supply routes, and communication traffic. It had identified patterns that no human analyst could see. More importantly, it had predicted where collective ships would be 3 days before they arrived. "It's learning faster than I expected," Bora told Admiral Soman during a secure video call. "The Watcher understands collective thinking now. It can predict their decisions because they're so logical. They follow patterns. We don't, so they can't predict us. But we can predict them." Soman saw the implications immediately. "Can you deploy more of these?" "Already working on it," Bora said. "I'll have 50 Watchers operational within a month. They'll monitor every aspect of collective space. Communications, military movements, economic data, political developments. We'll know what they're planning before they know it themselves." The Watchers changed everything. Human commanders received real-time intelligence on collective activities across the galaxy. They knew which systems were vulnerable. They knew where reinforcements were being sent. They knew when the collective was investigating too close to human bases, allowing those bases to relocate before being discovered. It was like playing a game when you could see your opponent's cards. The collective never stood a chance. Admiral Somin used the intelligence to begin Phase 3, reclamation. Human forces started openly taking back territory, but they did it carefully. They chose systems on the edge of collective space, places that were strategically unimportant, places the collective wouldn't waste resources defending, especially when they were busy dealing with internal problems. Each system was fortified immediately. Human engineering teams, using knowledge gained from captured collective technology and improved with human innovation, built defenses that could withstand significant attacks. Shipyards were constructed. Resource extraction operations were established. Slowly, methodically, humanity was rebuilding. The collective noticed, of course. Reports came in about human activity, but those reports were buried under thousands of other urgent issues. Internal investigations, political disputes, border conflicts. The humans were a lower priority, a mistake they would regret. 6 months into Phase 3, something unexpected happened. A collective ambassador reached out to humanity with a secret communication. The ambassador represented the Korvax species, one of the smaller members of the collective. They had voted against the human genocide but had been overruled by the council. Ambassador Wexelon, as he identified himself, appeared on Admiral Soman's screen. He looked nervous, his tentacles twitching in what her xenobiology experts identified as anxiety. "Admiral Kang," Wexelon said through his translator, "I am taking a great risk contacting you. My government does not know I am doing this, but I feel I must." Soman studied the alien carefully. "Why?" "Because the collective is no longer what it once was," Wexelon said. "Fear and paranoia have replaced cooperation. Species that were friends for millennia now view each other with suspicion. We have become exactly what we feared humanity would make us: chaotic, divided, weak." "You tried to exterminate us," Soman said flatly. "Why should I trust anything you say?" "You shouldn't," Wexelon admitted. "But I am not asking for trust. I am offering information. There are others like me, species who regret what was done to humanity. We cannot speak openly, but we can share intelligence. We can tell you which council members are looking for you. We can warn you of attacks. In return, we ask only that you remember when this is over, that not all of us wanted your extinction." Soman considered the offer. It could be a trap. The collective might be trying to locate human bases by tracing communications. But the Watchers had already analyzed Wexelon's message and determined it was legitimate. The Korvax ambassador was telling the truth. "We'll consider your offer," Soman said. "But know this, humanity doesn't forget. We don't forget those who tried to kill us, and we don't forget those who helped us either." Wexelon's tentacles stopped twitching. "That is all I can ask." Part 5, 10 years after the galaxy tried to end humanity, Chancellor Hyunwoo Park walked through the halls of the Unified Galactic Assembly, and he still couldn't quite believe it was real. The massive building stood on Valor Prime, the same planet where the Collective had once sentenced his species to death. The same chambers where billions of humans had been condemned now served as the seat of a government that represented over 60 different species. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Hyunwoo had been elected Chancellor 3 months ago, chosen by representatives from all member species of the new assembly. The man who had fled this planet in terror, watching his world burn, now led the very institution built on its ruins. The survivors had become the architects. He passed by a memorial wall as he walked, a section of the building dedicated to remembering what had happened. Names scrolled endlessly on holographic displays. Billions of humans who had died in the genocide. Millions more aliens who had perished in the wars that followed the Collective's collapse. The cost of rebuilding had been terrible but necessary. Dr. Minji Choi walked beside him, her hair now streaked with gray despite the best medical technology could offer. She had survived her time on Valor Prime by going into hiding. Rescued 2 years after the genocide by a human strike team, she had spent the years since studying how different species could coexist peacefully, and now served as the Assembly's chief advisor on interspecies relations. "Are you ready for this?" she asked him quietly. Hyunwoo smiled. "I escaped from this place 10 years ago thinking I'd never see it again. Now I'm about to give the opening address to a galactic government. No, I'm not ready. But when has that ever stopped us?" The assembly chamber was filled to capacity. Representatives from 63 species sat in curved rows rising up toward the domed ceiling. Some were familiar faces, allies who had joined humanity early. Others were former enemies who had only recently accepted the new order. A few were even Velkari, though their species had been reduced to a fraction of their former influence. Hyunwoo took his position at the central podium, looking out at the assembled beings. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, the terror of watching Earth die, the desperate years of hiding in the darkness, the slow, patient work of rebuilding, the battles fought and won, the enemies who became allies, the rules that had been rewritten. 10 years ago, he began, his voice carrying through the chamber. I stood in this very room and watched as the Galactic Collective condemned humanity to extinction. They said we were too dangerous to live, too aggressive, too unpredictable, too chaotic. They believed that erasing us would preserve their perfect order. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. They were wrong about a lot of things, but they were right about one. We are chaotic. We are unpredictable. We do disrupt order, but those aren't weaknesses. Those are our greatest strengths. Some of the alien representatives shifted uncomfortably. The concept still made many of them nervous. They had lived for so long under the Collective's rigid structure that the idea of embracing chaos felt dangerous. The old Collective tried to create peace through uniformity, Hyunwoo continued. Every species had to follow the same rules, think the same way, conform to the same standards. And for 3,000 years it worked. Sort of. There were no major wars, no significant conflicts, but there was also no growth. No innovation. No real progress. They had achieved stability, but they had sacrificed everything that makes civilization worth having. He gestured to the diverse assembly before him. Look at what we've built instead. 63 different species, each one unique. Different biologies, different cultures, different ways of thinking. And yes, we disagree, we argue. We challenge each other. But that's not a weakness. That's how we grow. A Korvax representative raised a tentacle, asking permission to speak. Hyunwoo nodded. Chancellor, the Korvax said through his translator. Many of us still fear that chaos. We remember what happened when the old Collective fell apart. The wars, the suffering. How do we know the same thing won't happen to this assembly? It was the question everyone was thinking. Hyunwoo had prepared for it. We can't know, he said honestly. We can't guarantee that this government will last forever. We can't promise there will never be conflicts. But here's what we can do. We can build systems that handle disagreement constructively. We can create rules that protect the weak from the strong. We can ensure that every species has a voice. And most importantly, we can remember what happens when we try to eliminate chaos entirely. He pulled up holographic images on the displays around the chamber. They showed the final days of the old Collective. Species at war with each other. Planets burning. Millions dying. The cost of trying to maintain perfect order through fear and suppression. This is what happens when you try to eliminate unpredictability, Hyunwoo said. When you suppress disagreement instead of managing it. When you punish difference instead of celebrating it. The pressure builds and builds until everything explodes. The old collective didn't fall because humans destroyed it. It fell because it was already broken. We just revealed the cracks. The chamber was silent. Many of the representatives had lived through those terrible years. They remembered. The Unified Galactic Assembly is built on different principles, Hyunwoo said. We accept that conflict will happen. So we create channels for it. Diplomatic negotiations, trade agreements, regulated competition, legal frameworks for resolving disputes. We don't try to eliminate chaos. We harness it. Over the next 3 hours, the Assembly worked through its agenda. Trade disputes between 2 species. Resource allocation for a joint scientific project. Military coordination for dealing with pirates. Discussions about expanding the Assembly to include more species. It was messy and complicated and sometimes frustrating. It was also beautiful. After the session ended, Hyunwoo met with former council members who had agreed to meet with him. They were the ones who had voted for humanity's extinction, now reduced to representatives of much smaller governments. The Velkari leader, Kelvar, was among them. Kelvar looked old now, his golden scales dulled with age. He studied Hyunwoo with eyes that held no hostility, only exhaustion. You must hate us, Kelvar said quietly. We tried to exterminate your entire species. We would have succeeded if you hadn't been so difficult to kill. Hyunwoo considered the statement. I did hate you. For years I woke up every day thinking about revenge. I wanted to see your species suffer the way mine did. I wanted you to know the pain of extinction. Why didn't you? Kelvar asked. Because it wouldn't bring anyone back, Hyunwoo said. Billions of humans are dead. Killing billions of Velkari wouldn't make us even. It would just mean more death, more suffering, and it would make us exactly what you feared we would become. Monsters. He looked at the former collective leaders, these beings who had once held the power of life and death over entire species. You tried to kill us because you were afraid. Afraid of change, afraid of losing control, afraid of what we represented, and that fear made you into the very thing you claimed to be protecting the galaxy from. Murderers. Kelvar's scales seemed to dim even further. You're right, of course. We became what we feared, and now we live in a galaxy shaped by the species we tried to erase. There's a poetry to it, I suppose. There's a lesson in it, Hyunwoo corrected. Fear makes us cruel. It makes us irrational. The old collective fell because it was governed by fear. This assembly will succeed because it's governed by hope. He stood up, preparing to leave. You and the others who voted for genocide, you'll face consequences. The Assembly has established tribunals to address war crimes. You'll be tried, and you'll probably be found guilty. But you won't be executed. You'll serve sentences, and when those are complete, you'll be allowed to return to your lives. Because we're trying to build something better than what you had. Kelvar looked up at him. Why show us mercy? After everything we did? Because that's the difference between us and you, Hyunwoo said simply. We learned. Months later, Hyunwoo stood in a different kind of gathering. It was the 10-year memorial of the genocide held on New Earth, the planet humanity had terraformed to replace their lost homeworld. Millions of humans and their alien allies had gathered to remember those who had been lost. Minji stood beside him, looking out at the crowd. Do you think we've honored them? She asked. The ones who died? Hyunwoo thought about his family, his parents, his sister, her children, all the people he had loved and lost. I think we've done what they would have wanted. We survived. We didn't let hatred destroy us. We built something worth living for. A young human girl approached them, maybe 8 years old. She was holding hands with a Korvax child, their species so different yet moving together as friends. The human girl looked up at Hyunwoo with wide eyes. Are you really the Chancellor? She asked. Hyunwoo smiled and knelt down to her level. I am. My teacher says you saved humanity, the girl said. Is that true? No, Hyunwoo said gently. Humanity saved itself. A lot of people did a lot of brave things. I was just one of them. The girl seemed to consider this. My friend Keksva says his grandparents were scared of humans. But I don't understand why. You're not scary. Part 4 5 years after the genocide, President Yoonji Choi stood before the newly constructed Assembly Hall on New Terra. The first world humanity had fully reclaimed and rebuilt. She looked out at the gathered crowd, human and alien, standing side by side, and felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. The path to this moment had been brutal. The Galactic Collective had fractured beyond repair. 4 species had formally withdrawn, including the Korvax who had first reached out to humanity. 3 more species were engaged in civil wars, fighting over resources and old grievances that had been suppressed for centuries. The council itself barely functioned, with members refusing to attend meetings or recognize each other's authority. Into that chaos, humanity had offered something simple but revolutionary: a choice. The Terran Accords, as they were called, had been drafted by hundreds of human and alien legal experts working together. The document was based on principles humanity had learned the hard way, through centuries of war and struggle on Earth: self-determination, mutual defense, regulated conflict, protection of civilian populations, and above all, absolute prohibition against genocide. Yunji had been elected as humanity's first president 6 months ago. She was a former professor of international law, someone who had spent her career studying how different nations could coexist peacefully. She had survived the genocide by being on a deep space research mission, and she had dedicated every moment since to ensuring it never happened again. Members of the assembly, she began, her voice carrying through the hall's acoustic systems. 5 years ago, the collective tried to erase humanity because they feared what we represented: change, unpredictability, the potential for chaos. They built their civilization on order and conformity, and they saw us as a threat to that order. She paused, looking at the alien delegates who had chosen to join the Terran Alliance. The Korvax with their tentacles and triple eyes. The Mixari, butterfly-like beings who had suffered under Velkari economic domination. The Tyros, a warrior species who had been forced into perpetual peace. And a dozen others, all seeking something better than what the collective had offered. They were right. We are a threat to their version of order, because their order was built on fear and suppression. They maintained peace by eliminating anyone who might disturb it. That's not peace. That's just slow tyranny. The aliens in the audience listened intently. Some had translators. Others had learned human languages in the past few years. All of them had chosen to be here to join something new. The Terran Accords offer a different vision, Yunji continued. We believe that peace comes from respect, not fear. We believe that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. We believe that every species has the right to govern itself, as long as they don't threaten others. These are simple principles, but they're also powerful ones. She held up a data tablet containing thousands of signatures. 13 species have signed the Accords. 13 different civilizations, all agreeing to stand together. Not because we're all the same, but because we're all different and we're willing to protect each other's right to be different. As Yunji spoke, General Minho Seo was preparing a demonstration that would show the galaxy exactly what humanity had become. He stood on the command deck of the Resilience, humanity's first true capital ship built after the war. It was larger than anything the collective had deployed, and it was filled with technology that combined the best of human innovation with adapted alien science. A collective battle fleet was approaching the Tarsus sector, the same area where Commander Jisoo had conducted psychological operations years ago. The fleet consisted of 20 warships, sent to reclaim territory the collective had lost to internal conflicts. They didn't know that Tarsus was now under Terran Alliance protection. General Minho had no intention of fighting them. That would be wasteful, and humanity had learned efficiency during their years of survival. Instead, he was going to show them why fighting was pointless. Open a channel to the collective fleet, he ordered. The fleet's commander appeared on screen, a Velkari officer who looked surprised to see a human face. The Velkari had been the first to call for humanity's extinction. Now they were meeting humanity in open space, and the surprise on the officer's golden-scaled face was satisfying. I am General Minho Seo of the Terran Alliance Defense Force, Minho said calmly. You are entering protected space. Turn back now and no one needs to get hurt. The Velkari commander recovered his composure. You dare threaten the collective? Your entire species should be extinct. Should be, Minho agreed. But we're not. And that's your problem, not ours. I'm giving you one chance. Leave peacefully. We are 20 warships. You are one. Surrender or be destroyed, Minho smiled. You're not getting it. Let me show you something. He nodded to his tactical officer. Across the sector, Dozens of human ships that had been hidden using advanced stealth technology suddenly became visible. They surrounded the collective fleet from every direction. But that wasn't the impressive part. The impressive part was when Minho's team activated the virus they had planted in the collective ship's systems 6 hours ago, using methods developed by Junho Lee and improved over years of practice. Every ship in the collective fleet simultaneously lost weapons control. Their targeting systems went offline. Their missiles failed to launch. Their energy weapons powered down. "What have you done?" the Velkari commander shouted. "I've taken control of your fleet without firing a single shot," Minho said. "Your shields are down. Your weapons are offline. Your engines are running at 10% capacity. I could destroy all 20 of your ships in the next 3 minutes, and there's nothing you could do to stop me." The Velkari's face showed genuine fear now. This was supposed to be impossible. The collective's technology was supposed to be superior. They were supposed to be safe. "But I'm not going to do that," Minho continued. "Because unlike the collective, we don't kill unless we have to. I'm going to let you leave. You're going to go back to your commanders and tell them what happened here. You're going to tell them that humanity has not only survived, but thrived. You're going to tell them that we can defeat any fleet they send without even trying. And you're going to tell them that if they want peace, we're willing to talk. But if they want war, we'll give them one they can't win." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I'm restoring control of your systems now. You have 10 minutes to leave this sector. If you're still here after that, I won't be so generous." The collective fleet systems came back online. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, the ships began turning away. Within 8 minutes, they had jumped to faster-than-light speed and vanished. Minho sat back in his command chair. Around him, his crew was celebrating. They had just faced down a collective battle fleet without firing a weapon. It was a new kind of victory, one that proved humanity had evolved beyond simple violence. Back on New Terra, Ambassador Haiyan Yu was conducting negotiations that were equally important, but far less dramatic. She sat across from delegates from 3 different collective species who had reached out secretly, seeking to join the Terran Alliance. The Orcs were an aquatic species who had been forced to give up their ocean worlds to serve as collective mining slaves. The Pilan were peaceful herbivores who had been conscripted into the collective military against their nature. The Vex were artificial intelligences who the collective had classified as property, rather than sentient beings. All of them had suffered under the collective's version of unity. All of them wanted something different. "The Terran Alliance isn't perfect," Haiyan told them honestly. "We're still figuring this out ourselves. We're building a new kind of government from scratch, and we'll make mistakes. But we're committed to giving every member species a real voice. Your governments will remain sovereign. Your cultures will be respected. Your rights will be protected." The Oryx delegate, speaking through a water-filled environment suit, asked the question they were all thinking. "Why should we trust humans? 5 years ago, you were nearly extinct. Now you're offering to protect us. What if you become like the collective?" It was a fair question. Haiyan had been expecting it. "You shouldn't trust us blindly," she said. "Trust has to be earned. But here's what we can offer that the collective never did. Transparency. Every decision we make is public. Every treaty is available for review. Every member species can propose changes to our laws. If we start becoming tyrannical, you'll see it coming and you'll have the power to stop it." She pulled up a holographic display showing the structure of the Terran Alliance government. "Look at this. We've built in checks and balances, multiple layers of oversight, requirements for consensus on major decisions. We've learned from humanity's history of government. We've seen what happens when power concentrates in too few hands. We're trying to build something better." The Vex delegate, a being of pure light inhabiting a mechanical body, spoke in a voice that sounded like musical tones. The collective claimed they were building something better too. They said they brought peace and prosperity. For some species, that was true. For others like us, it was slavery dressed up in pleasant words. "I know," Haiyan said, "and I can't promise you that joining us will solve all your problems." Part 2. 6 months had passed since the galaxy tried to kill them, and humanity had learned to live like ghosts. Admiral Soman Kang stood on the bridge of her flagship, hidden deep inside an asteroid field that didn't exist on any map. Around her, dozens of human ships floated in the darkness, their engines cold, their lights dimmed. They had become invisible, and invisibility had kept them alive. The collective believed humanity was finished. Their report said so. Their news broadcast celebrated the successful removal of a dangerous species. They had moved on, returning to their peaceful existence, confident that the human problem had been solved. They were wrong. Soman looked at the holographic display showing the locations of all surviving human outposts. They were scattered across uncharted space, hidden in places the collective would never think to look. Dead star systems. Unstable nebulae. The gaps between spiral arms where nothing of value existed. Humanity had crawled into the darkness and made it their home. She had named these hidden bases the Crucibles because that's what they were. Places where humanity would be forged into something new, something harder, something the collective would regret creating. "Admiral, we have a transmission from Crucible 7, her communications officer said. "Engineer Junho Lee says he's ready for the demonstration." Soman nodded and pulled up the video feed. Yunyo appeared on screen, his face thinner than she remembered, his eyes showing the exhaustion they all felt. But he was smiling, and that was rare enough these days. "Admiral," he said, "I think I've figured something out, something important." Junho had been working with salvaged collective technology for months, taking apart their weapons, their computers, their navigation systems. He was trying to understand how they worked, looking for weaknesses. But he had found something else instead. "Show me," Sumin said. Junho held up a small device, something he had pulled from a collective warship. "This is their standard processing unit. It's incredibly powerful, far beyond what we had before the war. But here's the interesting part. I ran some tests comparing it to human neural patterns. We process information differently than they do." He pulled up charts and graphs that Soman barely understood. The collective species, all of them, think in very linear ways. They're logical, efficient, predictable. They solve problems by following established patterns. It makes them excellent at maintaining their civilization, but terrible at innovation. "And humans?" Soman asked, though she thought she knew where this was going. "Humans are chaos," Junho said, his smile growing. "Our brains make connections that don't make logical sense. We dream, we imagine, we create solutions that shouldn't work but somehow do. That's why we scare them. That's why they tried to kill us. We're the chaos factor in their perfectly ordered universe." Soman felt something stirring in her chest. It might have been hope. "Can we use this?" "Already am," Junho said. "I've been adapting their technology to work with human neural interfaces. We can process their data faster than they can. We can hack their systems in ways they won't expect, because we don't think like they do. Admiral, we can turn their own technology against them." Soman closed her eyes for a moment, letting the information sink in. They had lost so much. Earth was a burned husk. Billions were dead. But humanity had something the collective didn't have. They had unpredictability. "Send your findings to all the Crucibles," she said. "Let's start building weapons they can't defend against." While Junho worked on technology, Yunahan was working on something more subtle. She had been an intelligence operative before the war, tracking criminal organizations across Earth's solar system. Now she was tracking something much bigger. Yuna sat in a stolen collective cargo ship, wearing a disguise that made her look like a Velkari traitor. The technology was crude, but the collective wasn't looking for human infiltrators. They thought all the humans were dead or hiding. They weren't expecting one to be walking through their supply stations, listening to their conversations, learning their secrets. She had spent 3 months moving through collective space, hopping from station to station, always careful, always watching. She had learned their shipping routes, their patrol patterns, their weak points, and she had been busy. A mining operation near the Calyx Nebula had suffered a mysterious equipment failure last month. All their processing equipment had simultaneously broken down, costing them millions in lost production. The collective blamed it on bad maintenance. A research station studying quantum mechanics had lost 6 months of data when their computers crashed. The collective blamed it on a software glitch. A military supply convoy had taken a wrong turn and ended up in a star's gravity well. Only 3 of the 12 ships escaped. The collective blamed it on navigation errors. None of them knew that Yunahan had been responsible for all of it. And she was just one person. Imagine what humanity could do with thousands like her. She sent her reports back to Admiral Soman through encrypted channels, using collective communication networks to hide her transmissions. The irony was delicious. They were using alien technology to coordinate attacks against the aliens themselves. The collective was starting to notice that things were going wrong. Small things at first. Equipment failures, lost ships, data corruption. They investigated each incident separately, never realizing they were all connected, never realizing they were under attack. 3 weeks later, Somin authorized the first real military operation since the war began. Commander Jisoo Nam led a strike team of 20 ships against a remote collective observation post. The post was monitoring a sector of space near one of the human crucibles, and Somin couldn't allow it to discover their base. Jisoo was a careful woman, methodical and precise. She had learned patience during the long months of hiding. Her ships approached the observation post slowly, using the cover of a comet shower to mask their signatures. The collective sensors were good, but they were designed to detect large fleets, not small groups of ships pretending to be space debris. The attack lasted 7 minutes. Jisoo's ships struck from 3 directions at once, targeting the station's communication arrays first. Before the aliens could send a distress call, their transmitters were slag. Then came the weapons fire, precise and devastating. The station's shields failed. Its hull cracked. Its crew evacuated in escape pods, which Jisoo allowed to leave. She didn't want to kill unnecessarily. That would make them like the collective. But she couldn't let anyone know humans had done this. So before she left, Jisoo planted evidence. Fragments of weapons that belonged to a different collective species. Pieces of hull plating with the wrong serial numbers. Enough to make it look like an internal attack, like one species had turned against another. The escape pods were picked up by a collective patrol. The survivors told their story. An attack from nowhere, ships that moved wrong, tactics they had never seen before, and evidence pointing to another species within the collective. Back at the Crucible, Somin watched the reports come in. The collective leadership was confused. They started investigating. They started questioning their own members. The seeds of doubt had been planted. Over the next 2 months, Somin authorized 19 more strikes. Each one looked different. Each one left evidence pointing to different collective species. Mining operations disrupted, supply lines cut, research vessels destroyed, always small targets, always far from any major population centers, always with just enough evidence to suggest internal betrayal. The collective began pulling ships away from their search for human survivors. They needed those ships to patrol their own territory, to watch their own members. Paranoia was spreading. Hyunwoo Park, who had been promoted to commander of the largest surviving battle group, received a message from his younger brother Taewon. The younger Park had always been brilliant with psychology and strategy. Before the war, he had been a military analyst. Now he was something more. Brother, Taewon's message said, I've been studying collective political structures. They're stable because they're unified. Every species follows the same rules, believes in the same goals. But that unity is also their weakness. They can't handle internal conflict. They've never had to. Taewon's face on the screen showed a calculating expression. What if we made them turn on each other? What if we showed them that their perfect unity was an illusion? Hyunwoo had learned to trust his brother's instincts. What do you need? Access to their communication networks. Yuna's already inside. I need her to start spreading information. Carefully chosen lies mixed with uncomfortable truths. Make them doubt each other. Make them question who ordered the human genocide. Make them wonder if some species benefited more than others. It was a dangerous game, but Hyunwoo had learned that survival required taking risks. Do it, he said. Taewon's disinformation campaign started small. Anonymous messages on collective communication networks, whispers and trading posts, rumors spread by agents like Yuna, suggestions that certain species had pushed for humanity's extinction because they wanted access to Earth's resources. Hints that the Council had been bribed. Questions about why some species had gained territory after the humans were gone. None of it was true. All of it was believable. The collective had existed for 3,000 years without major internal conflict. Part 1. The stars had never looked so beautiful, and Hyunwoo Park knew this might be the last time he would see them in peace. His ship glided through the darkness of space, approaching SciFiPrime with all the hope humanity could muster. After 200 years of dreaming about life beyond Earth, they had finally done it. They had built ships that could travel faster than light. They had reached out into the cosmos, and the cosmos had answered back. The Galactic Collective had sent the invitation themselves. 47 different alien species, all united under one government, welcoming humanity to join them. It seemed too good to be true. Hyunwoo had said as much to Dr. Minji Choi during the long journey from Earth, but she had laughed at his worries. She was the ship's xenobiologist, a woman who had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. She believed in peaceful coexistence. She believed aliens would see humanity's potential, not their flaws. Captain Daeho Kim, who commanded the military escort ships, was less optimistic. He kept his weapons charged and his crews alert. But he had to admit that the collective's greeting seemed genuine. They had been given coordinates, safe passage, and even a ceremonial honor guard of sleek alien vessels that looked like floating crystals. The aliens called themselves the Velkari, and they spoke perfect English through their translation devices. SciFiPrime was a sight that took Hyunwoo's breath away. The planet glowed with cities that spiraled into the clouds, connected by bridges of pure light. Massive rings orbited the world, covered in gardens and buildings that seemed to grow rather than be built. Thousands of ships from dozens of species filled the space around the planet, each one unique and strange. Humanity's small fleet looked primitive by comparison, but Hyunwoo held his head high. They had earned their place here. The assembly hall was even more impressive. It stood at the peak of the tallest mountain on SciFiPrime, a structure so vast it could hold 1 million beings. The ceiling showed the stars above, somehow visible even through solid walls. Hyunwoo, Minji, and Daeho walked down a long platform toward the center, where the High Council waited. Beings of every shape and size watched them from tiered seating that rose up like an arena. Some had wings, others had tentacles, and a few looked almost human except for their strange colors and extra eyes. The High Council consisted of 12 members, one from each of the founding species. They sat in floating chairs that hummed with energy. The center figure, a tall being covered in golden scales, raised one long arm in greeting. Its voice came out smooth and deep through the translation device. "Humans of Earth," it said, "we welcome you to the Galactic Collective. We have observed your species for many cycles. We have seen your progress, your achievements, your determination to reach the stars. Today we gather to discuss your place among us." Hyunwoo stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "On behalf of all humanity, we thank you for this opportunity. We come in peace, seeking friendship and knowledge. We hope to learn from you, and perhaps share what we have learned ourselves." The golden-scaled being nodded slowly. Then its expression changed. The warmth vanished from its eyes, replaced by something cold and final. "That is precisely why you cannot be allowed to continue," it said. The words hung in the air like poison. Hyunwoo felt his blood turn to ice. Beside him, Minji gasped, and Daeho's hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm, though he had been asked to leave his weapons behind. Another council member spoke, this one resembling a floating jellyfish made of blue light. "We have studied your history, humans. We have seen your wars, your violence, your endless conflicts. In the short time since you discovered agriculture, you have nearly destroyed yourselves 17 times. You create weapons capable of annihilating your own world, and you point them at each other over disagreements in philosophy." A third council member, something that looked like Livingstone, added its voice. "Worse still, you adapt too quickly. You solve problems in ways we cannot predict. You take our technology and improve upon it within years of seeing it. You are clever, aggressive, and utterly unpredictable. These traits make you dangerous." Hyunwoo found his voice, though it shook. "Dangerous? We came here in peace. We have fought wars, yes, but we learned from them. We united our world. We put aside our differences to reach the stars together. That unity makes you more dangerous, not less," the golden-scaled leader said. "A divided humanity posed no threat beyond your own star system. A united humanity, driven by the same ambition that pushed you to build weapons and conquer your own planet, could destabilize the entire galaxy. We cannot allow that risk." Minji stepped forward, her voice desperate. "You can't judge us for what we might do. Give us a chance to prove ourselves. Let us join you and we will show you that humans can be peaceful." The council leader looked at her with something that might have been pity. The decision has already been made. It was made before you arrived. This assembly is not a trial. It is a sentencing. Humanity will be eliminated, quickly and efficiently. We take no pleasure in this, but we have a responsibility to protect the trillions of lives in the collective. Daeho grabbed Hyunwoo's arm. We need to leave now. But it was already too late. Alarms began blaring throughout the ship network. Daeho's communication device lit up with emergency signals. His face went pale as he listened to the reports flooding in. Earth, he whispered. They're bombing Earth. The massive screens around the assembly hall flickered to life, showing live feeds from across human space. Earth's orbital defense platforms exploded in silent flashes. Cities on Mars vanished under bombardment. The colony on Europa went dark. Thousands of ships from the collective fleet had appeared simultaneously across all human territories, firing without warning. Hyunwoo watched in horror as everything humanity had built burned. Billions of lives snuffed out in moments. His family lived in Seoul. His sister, her children, his aging parents, gone. All gone. Run, Daeho said, pulling both Hyunwoo and Minji toward the exit. We run, or we die here. They ran. Behind them, the council watched impassively as the human delegation fled. No one tried to stop them. They were already considered dead. The journey back to their ship was a blur. Emergency protocols activated automatically, sealing them inside and launching before anyone could react. Daeho's military escorts formed up around them, and they jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving HFY behind. But they had nowhere to go. The communication channels were filled with screams and dying transmissions. Colony after colony went silent. Earth's distress calls ended abruptly. In less than 6 hours, the Galactic Collective had nearly wiped out humanity. Hyunwoo sat in his captain's chair, numb with shock. Around him, his crew wept. Some screamed. Others sat in silence, processing the unthinkable. Then, through the static and the silence, a transmission came through. It was weak, fragmented, and barely recognizable. But Hyunwoo knew the voice immediately. It was Minji Choi, but not the Minji standing beside him on the bridge. This was a recording, sent before the attack began. The real Dr. Choi had stayed behind on HFY, claiming she needed to collect more data. She had known something was wrong. Her message was simple but vital. The collective is strong, but it's built on fear. They're afraid of change. They're afraid of chaos. They're afraid of us because we represent everything they've tried to eliminate from their perfect order. But fear is a weakness. And if I've learned anything about humanity, it's that we know how to exploit weakness. Don't give up. Don't surrender. Make them regret that they didn't finish the job. The transmission ended. Hyunwoo looked around his bridge at the survivors. Less than 400 million humans remained alive in the entire universe. Earth was gone. Their homes were gone. Everything was gone, but they were still breathing. And as long as humans could breathe, they could fight. Set course for the deep void, Hyunwoo said quietly. Find every human ship that survived. Bring them together. The collective wanted to erase us. He stood, his grief hardening into something sharper and more dangerous. They should have made sure we were dead.